Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine pushing a massive, incredibly heavy boulder up a steep hill, only to watch it roll right back down to the bottom every single month. Honestly, that is exactly what building wealth feels like for the first few years, doesn't it? You put in the work, you scrape together the savings, and it just feels like you're getting nowhere. But today, we are going to completely demystify that timeline. We're going to break down the exact mathematical and psychological thresholds that take that tiny, frustrating savings account and turn it into an absolute, unstoppable compounding machine. Look, if you've ever felt like your money is just moving in slow motion, or if you find yourself constantly wondering when all of this disciplined investing is actually going to pay off, you are in the exact right place. We are going to look at the hard data, the behavioral science, and the real-world math behind achieving true financial freedom. And that brings us to the ultimate multi-million-dollar question. Seriously, why do most people quit investing right before the math actually starts working? It's wild, but the sources reveal a fascinating and honestly kind of tragic reality. There is a highly predictable point where we humans just give up on compounding altogether. People get frustrated, they suddenly change up their strategies, or they just throw in the towel and stop completely. And the kicker? It happens right on the precipice, right before the underlying math is about to kick in heavily and work in their favor. So today, we're going to identify exactly where that point is, so you don't become just another statistic.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the psychology of starting small. Second, surviving the phase 1 grind. Third, the 100K phase transition. And finally, buying time and ultimate freedom.
Starting with Section 1, the psychology of starting small.
You know, the initial friction we all face when trying to save isn't actually about a lack of discipline. It's really not. It's about the fact that we're operating within a financial system that inherently sets us up to fail. Think about it. Most people operate out of one single checking account. Your rent comes out of it, your groceries come out of it, your daily coffee comes out of it. And as the Nobel-winning behavioral economist Richard Thaler found, human beings are just naturally terrible at mental accounting. If all your money is sitting in one giant pool, your brain simply treats all of it as spending money, and that leads to frictionless overspending. So the absolute crucial first step here is to separate that money using a two-account system. Account number 1 is your bills account. This is for fixed expenses only, and crucially, there's absolutely no debit card attached to it. Account number 2 is your spending account. This is your flexible, entirely guilt-free money. By structuring things this way, you are effectively moving the psychological candy bowl out of reach. It's basic human nature. If a bowl of candy is sitting right on your desk, you're going to eat it, right? But if it's hidden away in the cupboard, you don't even think about it. Money works the exact same way. This one simple architectural change stops the frictionless overspending that is constantly eating up the capital you desperately need to start investing. So, once you've stopped the bleeding, how do you actually start building? Well, you start with something that sounds almost laughably small, the $10 habit. Moving just $10 a week into savings or investments, it doesn't require some massively complicated spreadsheet, but it does do something profound psychologically. It literally shifts your identity. You move from being just a consumer to being an investor, and you do it without triggering any financial panic in your brain. You see, once your brain realizes that the world didn't suddenly end just because you saved $10, you naturally start finding $20 and then $50. It entirely breaks that paralyzing cycle of having zero savings, and it builds the critical momentum you're going to need for the next massive phase of the journey.
All right, moving on to Section 2, surviving the phase 1 grind. Now, we have to be honest here. This early stage is absolutely the hardest part of the journey. This is the phase where it feels like the spreadsheets are actively mocking you. Richard Thaler defined a brilliant concept for this called the feedback gap. Humans are deeply wired to continue behaviors that produce visible, immediate results. But in phase 1 of investing, compound interest generates returns that are so mathematically tiny, they literally fall below your perceptual threshold. Think of it this way. If you invest $50 a month at an 8% return, after an entire year of perfect, unwavering discipline, your investments have earned you about $5. Your brain looks at that data and screams, okay, this strategy is clearly broken. But the accurate logical reading of that data is that the strategy is working exactly as it was mathematically designed to. It's just operating at a scale that is way too small for you to really feel yet. And unfortunately, this psychological misreading prompts the single most expensive mistake any investor can make, the strategy switch. People get bored or frustrated, so they abandon a perfectly working index fund to go chase some hot stock, which effectively resets their compounding clock entirely back to zero. And this brilliantly illustrates the reality of what's actually happening under the hood. I want you to think of your portfolio exactly like a car engine. In phase 1, you are the engine. The system is running entirely on direct combustion, which means your monthly contributions are doing all of the heavy lifting. Now, the turbocharger, which represents compound interest, is technically bolted to the engine block, But at these low RPMs, there just isn't enough exhaust pressure to spin the turbine yet. You literally can't feel the boost. Phase 2, on the other hand, is when that turbocharger finally engages, and compounding completely takes over, doing more work than your actual monthly deposits. But here is the brutal truth of the math. Every single dollar you contribute in Phase 1 is simply to get the engine up to the RPM where that boost can actually kick in. That's the grind.
Let's look at the actual math that those smooth, pretty financial charts always seem to gloss over. Assuming an 8% return across the board, the only variable we're changing here is the monthly contribution. At $50 a month, your 30-year result is around $74,500. Notice something there. You never even reach the $100,000 threshold. The turbo literally never engages. You spend your entire investing lifetime trapped in the Phase 1 grind. But look what happens when you push that contribution to $400 a month. Suddenly, the 30-year result jumps to nearly $600,000, and you hit that $100,000 boost threshold in just 14 years. That leaves you 16 full years of Phase 2 compounding, where the math is doing all the heavy lifting for you. Now, when frustrated Phase 1 investors see that slow, early growth, they almost always diagnose the problem completely incorrectly. They sit there and think, man, my return rate is just too low, and they start chasing theoretical 16% returns by gambling on highly volatile biotech stocks or crypto. But the actual data from Dalbar, which is a major financial analytics firm, shows that the average equity fund investor actually underperforms the market by 2 to 3% annually over long periods, and it's precisely because of this panic selling and return chasing. Listen to me. The problem in Phase 1 is not your return rate. It is your contribution level. The lever that actually changes your outcome in this early stage isn't finding some magical secret fund. It is simply adding more fuel to the boring, reliable engine safely and consistently. Which brings us to Section 3, the 100K phase transition, where the math finally takes over. We are now crossing into the territory where the entire game changes. $100,000. This is a legendary number in the personal finance world, and it's for a very specific, undeniable mathematical reason. This is the exact milestone where the math starts to aggressively take over the heavy lifting. It deserves immense gravity in your journey because getting to this number is an absolute grind. But what happens immediately after is a completely different world. Now, what's really interesting about this transition is the sheer power of the percentages. 8% of a $10,000 balance is $800 a year. Let's be real, that's maybe a couple tanks of gas and some groceries. It's nice, but it absolutely does not change your life. But 8% of $100,000, that's $8,000 a year. That is real, tangible, meaningful monthly income generated from doing absolutely nothing but letting the money sit there. The percentage didn't change at all, the size of the pile did. This is the exact moment that turbocharger engages. And hey, quick side note, if you are getting value out of this explainer and you're serious about truly understanding how wealth actually grows under the hood, make sure you subscribe to Langford Invest right now so you don't miss any of our deep dives into the mechanics of financial freedom. Okay, so let's look at how we build this into a highly actionable strategy to actually reach that 100K threshold way faster, because as we're learning, time is definitely of the essence. The sources give us 3 specific, highly practical mechanisms. First, right-size your contributions today by logging into your account and adding just $50 a month. It takes maybe 15 minutes to set up, and honestly, it's practically invisible to your day-to-day budget. Second, redirect 50% of any raise or bonus you get into your investments instantly. If you wait even 90 days, the lifestyle ratchet clicks forward, and your budget will somehow mysteriously absorb that new money. Third, execute what we call a contribution reset after major life events. Experian data shows the average American car payment is over $700 right now. When you finally pay that car off, immediately redirect $300 or $400 of that newly freed up cash flow directly into your investments the very day that final check clears. This is pure financial architecture. It does not rely on willpower. So why is speed to that threshold so critical? Why the rush? Because your earliest dollars are the most expensive, most exponentially powerful dollars in your entire portfolio. Think about this. A single dollar invested in month 1, growing at an 8% return, becomes $10.60 after 30 years. That exact same dollar, if you wait and invest it in year 25, only compounds to $1.47. So when you delay starting, or when you let a pay raise just get absorbed by your lifestyle creep instead of investing it, you aren't just losing a small amount of money today. You are literally sacrificing the most explosive, long-runway compounding dollars you will ever have access to in your lifetime.
Thanks for watching. If this gave you a new way to think about your wealth, subscribe to Langford Invests.
Let's move into our final segment,
Section 4, Buying Time and Ultimate Freedom.
Once we truly understand compounding, we have to fundamentally redefine what it actually means to reach a target. Take $500,000, for example. For decades, the financial industry has aggressively sold us the narrative that you need $2, $3, or even $5 million to officially escape the rat race, that you basically have to grind it out at a desk until your body gives out at age 70. But the hard data shows us a completely different reality. We are going to challenge that mainstream belief that multi-millions are strictly required for freedom, and we'll do it using just this $500,000 milestone. Just look at the pure arithmetic of a $500,000 portfolio. If you take that money and put it into safer fixed income plays, like investment-grade bonds or high-yield accounts at a very conservative 5% return, that generates $25,000 a year. That's over $2,000 a month. If you utilize a more balanced portfolio of stocks and bonds aiming for an 8.5% return, you are generating $42,500 a year. That is over $3,500 every single month, entirely passively. And here is the absolute magic of this math. You are doing this without ever draining the principal balance. You aren't slowly draining a bathtub of money and just praying you pass away before it's empty. You are literally living off the interest waves that the pile just keeps generating month after month.
Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're saying there is no way I can live on 42 grand a year. But listen closely, because the ultimate boss level move in personal finance isn't just about earning more cash. It's about structurally needing less cash to survive. The sources highlight some very specific lifestyle shifts that make $3,500 a month feel like ultimate breathing room freedom. For instance, if you ditch that $700 average car payment because constantly buying a brand new car every 6 years is a massive wealth destroyer, and if you cut the $3,000 a year coffee and takeout habit, suddenly your monthly burn rate absolutely plummets. Combine those moves with torching your mortgage early or relocating to a state with a lower cost of living, and your baseline cost of living suddenly drops below which your investments passively toss off. At that exact moment, you are suddenly financially immortal.
But to actually make those kinds of lifestyle shifts, you have to understand a psychological concept called the invisible price tag. Every single time you spend money on something that doesn't hold its value, you aren't just paying the visible price today. Let me explain. A $500 purchase today doesn't actually cost you just $500. It carries an invisible price tag of nearly $10,000, because that is exactly what that $500 would have compounded into over 30 years if you had just invested it instead. Most people go their entire lives completely blind to this second price tag. But when you finally start seeing it, deciding to keep driving your perfectly reliable 10-year-old car stops feeling like some awful sacrifice, and it starts feeling like a highly strategic choice that is directly funding your future freedom.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground in this explainer today, but I want to leave you with one final paradigm-shifting quote from the sources. Real wealth isn't piles of stuff, it's piles of options. It is simply the power to say no to the things that drain you, and yes, to designing your days entirely around your actual values. So I have to ask you, and I want you to really think about this. Look at your spending over the last 30 days. Are your current habits simply buying you more stuff today, or are they mathematically buying your ultimate freedom tomorrow? The math is just sitting there, waiting for you to decide.
Thanks for watching. If this gave you a new way to think about your wealth, subscribe to Langford Invests. Leave a comment below with the one savings move you're making this year, and I'll see you in the next one.